Good to hear from you, Tereshini ji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
And Hare Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. So, Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Let's get started with our opening prayers and then we will get into the topic of our discussion for the day. Let me share my screen. All right. I hope you are able to see my screen. All good there.
Yes, all good.
Okay, let's get started with our opening prayers then. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanurmardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe. Good morning, good evening. Once again, just give me a sec. I wanted to make sure the alignment is good today. All right, I made it happen. Oops. About that, I want to share my screen again. Okay, so let's get started with our session for the day, starting with our Soul Soup segment, which is the series on mind management that we are doing. So we've been talking about anger, greed, and the mother of anger and greed, which is desire. So we'll continue to build on this topic. Today we will talk a little bit about the anger aspect of it, right? So anger is something which destroys good judgment, and desire is the mother of anger and greed. Like it's a two-edged sword, because its fulfillment leads to greed and its hindrance leads to anger. So this is how this process unfolds, and that is why it's called a two-edged sword. And once anger arises, it brings with it numerous other afflictions. Okay. So what are those afflictions is what we are going to look at. Now, anger is a little bit like sec. Yeah. So if you look at, not able to write this off. Give me a sec. I think it's not working fine for me. Now it should be okay. Right. So when we cater to our desires, when we fulfill our desires, it takes us further away from the peace, happiness, joy that we are looking for. It may give us temporary relief, but immediately the sense of dissatisfaction creeps in, and it has actually taken us further away from peace. But when we try to subdue our desire, that's when we get more closer to the inner bliss of soul, or dovetail our desire in the direction of God. So it takes us closer to the bliss of soul. Now, anger, let's talk about anger. So as you see, these two people, they are in some kind of an altercation. And what one is saying to other is, are you out of your mind? How dare you call me angry and uncontrolled? So you can become upset on any reason, and you can become upset, and then you can become upset on the fact that somebody is calling you upset or angry, right? So this is how anger goes, because you lose your sanity around it. And Bhagavad Gita also says, what does Bhagavad Gita talks about 2.63, where it says, Krodhad bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhrama, smriti bhranchad buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. So anger leads to failing of judgment, which results in bewilderment of memory, When memory is bewildered, the intellect gets destroyed, and when the intellect is destroyed, one is ruined. And there's a clouding of judgment or intellect that happens. Yesterday we were talking about mind and intellect. So intellect is the one which actually makes judgment. It discriminates between good and bad. It takes decisions. And when your intellect itself is clouded, how can you make any decision, good decision? It's just like um, if you are if you are gone to northern India during winters, there's a lot of fog outside. In fact, there was some fog in Dallas also a couple of days back in the morning. So when you are in fog, you can only see so far ahead, right? It clouds your vision. So similarly, that fog, it clouds our judgment when we get angry, that point. So it's like a mist which creates a hazy covering on our intellect. And when the intellect is shrouded, your memory gets bewildered. You lose sense. Okay, you forget the good things. And the only thing that you want to do at that point is to vent our anger. And then you forget what is right, what is wrong. And it just comes with a surge of emotions, and a lot of things that we later go on to regret can happen in that emotional state when we let our anger vent, give a vent to our anger. Now, this destruction of intellect, because intellect is our internal guide, it is the one which is telling the mind what to do and what not to do. And when that internal guide itself is destroyed, one is ruined. So that is how it goes. So a host, there, if you look at it, so many things have happened, right? Clouding of your judgment, and and then basically it's a fast track to ruin if you have that kind of a temperament. So from desire come greed and anger, and through anger we know how many bad things can happen. So we will continue on this discussion, and tomorrow we will talk about what gives rise to this desire. We have spoken about the desire is the mother of both greed and anger. Then what is the mother or the genesis or the reason for having that desire is what we will talk about tomorrow. So with that said, now let's get to the shloka that we've been talking about. We'll talk about knowledge aspect of it today. I don't know what's going on with my screen today. Just struggling a little bit. Give me a sec. Okay, back to shloka. Let's take three hands after I get to recite it. But let me move this. Something is not working right for me today. ज्ञानेन तु तद् ज्ञानम् ये तद् येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानम् prakashyati tatparam. Okay, let's take three hands.
Aparna ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Aparna ji.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
ज्ञानेन तु तद् अज्ञानं येषां नाशितम् आत्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्.
Thank you, Aparna ji. Radhe Radhe. Let's take two more hands.
Namaran ji, Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानम् अज्ञानम् येषां न नश्रितम् आत्मनः तेषाम् आदित्यवज्ञानम् प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe. Riya ji, please go ahead.
श्रितमात्मनः राधे राधे
Yes, yes, please recite it.
ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानम् येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषाम् आदित्यवज्ञानम् प्रकाशयति तत्परम्.
Very nice, thank you. All right, so let's get started. So in this shloka, all right, we have, okay, Lakshmi ji, real quick, please go ahead. No more, let's freeze the number of hands now.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
ज्ञानेन तु तत् अज्ञानं येषां नाशितम् आत्मनः तेषाम् आदित्यवत् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Radhe Radhe. Let's get started. This Lord Krishna is saying, but though for those whose ignorance is destroyed by divine knowledge, the supreme entity is revealed, just as the sun illumines everything when it rises. Now, we're talking about knowledge. What is true knowledge is what we are going to talk about today. So let's get started. So nature of true knowledge. Okay, this is what we're going to spend time on today. So is having an in-depth expertise, certifications, qualifications in your profession is what true knowledge is. I mean, if you think about the material world as we started studying general science to begin with, and then it split into specialized subjects like biology, chemistry, physics. And within chemistry also, if you look at it, organic chemistry, physical, inorganic, and all that stuff, right? So as the science or the study keeps on getting more refined, it becomes subtler and subtler, right? I mean, you can go into any level of depths that you want, and still you cannot claim that you're an expert in that particular field. That is how the mic world is. Any subject, anything that you pick up, you can never say you have perfected it. Okay, that is how vast or infinite it could be. If you think about God's creation, right, it is infinite. They say that it is possible to count the number of specks of dust in this universe, but it is still not possible to count the number of universes out there. Okay, this is how vast or infinite the creation is. And if you are acquiring knowledge in a particular subject, you can go only up to a certain level, right? Although we have infinite potential, but even if you look at the nature, right, we have three primary colors: red, blue, and green. And through red, blue, and green, how many combinations are possible? Infinite. Similarly, we have Triguni Maya. How many combinations are possible? Infinite. How many suras do we have? 7. How many combinations are possible? Infinite. How many musics you can generate through using those, right? So this is not true knowledge, because it does not lead us to the truth. Anything that leads you to the absolute truth is true knowledge. So you can gain knowledge, which is fine. But is this true knowledge? No. What is true knowledge? We'll get into that. Is it learning about advancements and later research in medical science so that we can take care of our body and mind? Is it true knowledge? No, I mean, it is knowledge. Yes, it is material knowledge, but not true knowledge, because in the shloka, Lord Krishna has used the word divine knowledge, right? If you go back to the shloka, here he's very clearly saying ignorance is destroyed by divine knowledge. Okay, not with any kind of other knowledge. Okay, so this has a limitation. The material knowledge has a limitation, and it is catering to body and mind for most parts, if you think about it, not the soul aspect of it. Is it knowing about the latest news and world events, where we spend a lot of time? What is going on in the world, and Middle East, and other Russian crisis and Ukraine crisis and all that stuff? I mean, how does it matter? And see, some people take on a special interest in world events and stuff like that, which is fine. I mean, from an entertainment standpoint, but it is not a knowledge that is truly helping, right? Other than striking conversations and giving your opinions about it. So true knowledge, then what is true knowledge? True knowledge is to know one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. Okay, this is true knowledge. And until then, until we have truly gotten to that point, one so-called knowledge is understood as ignorance. Now, there are varying levels of ignorance. We are trying to understand the absolute truth, right? It's a process, it's a journey. But until we have completed that journey, we are still under the cloud of ignorance. Because we are still Mayadheen as yet. So that ignorance, relative ignorance might be better than others, but then it is still ignorant. And even when we are 99.9% there, it is still ignorant. Only when it is 100%, then you say, I'm out of ignorance. Until we have absolutely understood God, we're still under ignorance. This is how this is meant to be interpreted. So one's relationship with the Supreme Lord, we have to understand that. And when we truly understand that, that itself will lead us to the true knowledge itself, right? Because then you'll be perfectly aligned to the service of God itself. Now, let's continue to build on it. Why do we get under ignorance? So for that, we'll have to first understand the different aspects of God's energies that are at play here. So this is God. I hope you recognize this God. Why the picture is like this. Now God has three energies. The first one is called Maya, Avidya or Aparashakti as well. It is also called God's external, inferior, or Atarangi or Bahirangi, external energy of God. This is called Maya. Then we have some Jiva Shakti, which is called Tatastha Shakti, which is the surface or the marginal power of God. So it's like a borderline energy. Maya energy is an external energy. This is borderline. And then there is a Swarupa Shakti, Vidya Parar Yogamaya Shakti, or Atarangi Shakti also it is called. These are the three energies of God primarily. Not just limited to that, God has infinite energies. But for now, let's understand these are the three main energies of God. We are the marginal power of God. Okay. We are the Tatastha Shakti of God. We are neither Maya Shakti, which is completely Jad, insentient, nor are we Swarupa Shakti, which is full of Satchit Anand. This is the energy which enables God to take on a form as well. We are his marginal power, which is called Jiva Shakti. Now, if we were a direct part of, we always say we are fragmental part of God, right? If we were direct fragments of God, we would have been perfect as well, like God himself, right? Purnasya Purnamidam, if you would have come across that, every part of God is like perfect like God himself. However, we are part of his Jiva Shakti. That is why we are not yet perfect. So God is Satchit Anand, we are Anusat, Anuchit, Anu Anand. It's like even in our um, body, we have like marginal things, right? Our nails are there, hair are there, even though they are part of the body, but they are still different. Similarly, our marginal power of God is different. It's like a bank of a river, right? If you look at the river, and then there is a land, and then there is a bank. So bank is the tatast or the marginal. It belongs to river, and it's at the cusp of land and river both. So we are like that. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about Maya, Avidya Shakti of God. It has two aspects to it. One is Swarupa Varika, through which God creates the world, and the other is Guna Varika, Maya. Swarupa Varika is which makes the world. Okay, using this, God creates the world in which we live. And Guna Varika Maya is basically, it makes us get attached to the world where the three gunas come into play, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. However, this Maya Shakti, Avidya Shakti controls the Jiva Shakti, Tatastha Shakti. We are under the sway of Maya. And that is why we are under ignorance. It is like the firefly, it does not have enough light and it gets engulfed with night, the darkness of night. And since we have, again, I don't want to open up a can of worms here, always been facing Maya, we are engulfed with Maya. We are under the sway of Maya right now. We are Maya Dheen. Okay. But does that mean we always have to stay under the sway of Maya or influence of Maya? The answer is an overwhelming no. Okay, that is the good news. The bad news is we are under the sway of Maya, and because of which we are ignorant. We are facing darkness right now. But there are a lot of people in flesh and blood who have actually turned their back away from darkness and turned towards the light, and because of which they have conquered Maya. We'll talk about that. How does that work? So these are the Shaktis we spoke about. Let's see so this is us and this is our soul. You see, it's in darkness. It's in ignorance right now. Now, spiritual gyan or knowledge of a living entity is covered by Maya, and that is why it is under darkness. If you see it, it's under darkness. Okay, it's covered with a lot of layers of darkness. Soul in itself is untouched, it is untainted, it is pure. But because it is it has the, the mind intellect complex that it has to deal with. Those layers are tainted with the Triguni Maya at this point, and because of which it is in darkness. Then what happens when true knowledge rises in the heart, like the sun, that this agyan is removed. That is what we are trying to do. So go move away from this darkness that the soul is in since infinite lifetimes, and then gradually this ignorance starts getting destroyed. So this is how the knowledge will start flowing in, and when the knowledge will start flowing, you see the soul started shining, the light has come in now. Okay, this is how the process is supposed to manifest. And what we are trying to do is move away from that, state of darkness that we are engulfed with right now towards a state of, where soul is illumined and it can shine forth. Now, soul had fallen into illusion because of God's material energy. It has always been under its dominion. We are Maya Dhin. God is Maya Dhi. She is the boss of Maya. And for us to get across Maya, we need to go to the boss and say, okay, can you do something for me? It's a very simple principle. It's like you go to somebody's house and they have a dog. The dog, regardless of what you try to do, will not let you enter the house. You think I can sneak in through the back door? And he'll say, okay, do you have guts? You have to cross over me. You try to sneak in through window, dog will come there as well. So the best thing is go to the owner, say, can you do something? And the owner will say, hey, Smokey, can you please give sight to this person? And he's, and then the Smokey will wag the tail and sit on the side. So you cannot, the Maya is like that dog. It will find its way and sneak into you to cover you and keep you perpetually under ignorance until you surrender to its boss, which is God himself. So let's understand this principle a little more. So how do we get true knowledge? Let's try to understand that. How do we get this true knowledge? So let's say we do Gyan, a lot of acquisition of knowledge, read scriptures, Vedic mantras, all that knowledge that, you can go on reading scriptures and pretty much all the austerities and whatever the Gyan mark talks about, that is one way. You could go about acquiring all the knowledge about our scriptures and everything. That could be one of the ways. Or you could try to get true knowledge through some japa tapa, austerities and meditation, and getting into samadhi and stuff like that. Both ways are possible, right? Now, let's say you continue this. It's not going to happen in one lifetime, because if you were to read scriptures, one lifetime is not good enough for you to understand that. It can take multiple lifetimes. I don't know how many, because human intellect is not equipped to handle too much of knowledge. Being able to go through the scriptures, assimilate, dissect it, assimilate it, and imbibe it in our life is will take quite some effort, right? And same thing goes for japa tapa as well, because those practices demand a lot of discipline and it can take multiple lifetimes. However, we're still missing a point here. What scriptures tell us that you keep on doing that, you keep on doing that, you keep on doing that. Okay, they're all zeros. Now, it's a pretty revolutionary statement, right? Unless, of course, these are all zeros. Now you're saying, am I just adding zeros to my life? Yeah, because there's still a secret ingredient that is missing here. And what is that secret ingredient? That secret ingredient is that of bhakti, which is the one before all these zeros. You see, all these zeros, they don't carry any weight at all unless you prefix it with one, and that one is devotion or bhakti to God. If you do not add that to, then those practices become a pure mechanical drill. And our scriptures tell us that you can conquer Maya up to a certain extent. Maya has two aspects to it, Vidya Maya or Avidya Maya. So Avidya Maya aspect of it, Atma Gyan, till Atma Gyan you can reach. But for you to get Brahma Gyan, you have to add devotion. Okay, and because, why? Okay, now let me give you some scriptural reference for it as well. Why? Because through bhakti, what will happen is, you have started bringing the boss or the owner of Maya into the mix. And then through his grace, you can conquer Maya. That knowledge that you are gaining will fructify and become perfect only through his grace. In Bhagavad Gita, Again, we go back and forth. 18th chapter, I'm jumping to 18th chapter. After all the knowledge that Lord Krishna gives to Arjun, finally Arjun says, Nashto moha smriti labdha tvat prasadan myachyut. So basically, tvat prasadan, he's saying, by your grace. He's not saying by my effort or through my intellectual prowess. He's saying by your grace. So for us to draw grace, we have to mix devotion and that surrender aspect of it. And that's how we get the true knowledge. And also, like we say that, right? Gyan, agyan, and yoga kuyoga jnana jnano jeh nahi ram prema pardhano. So basically, if a yoga becomes a kuyog and gyan becomes an agyan, unless you mix it with devotion or love for God. And that is the secret sauce for us to get true knowledge as well, because then through God's grace, it becomes realized knowledge or wisdom in our heart. And that knowledge is revealed in our heart. In fact, if you look at a lot of saints, they did not do any studies. They did not read scriptures at all. It was just revealed to them from within. Okay, that is the power of knowledge, bhakti. When you do bhakti devotion, it is said that we saw the mother of anger and greed, which was desire. Similarly, mother of bhakti and vairagya and gyan. Gyan and vairagya is bhakti itself. So if you do bhakti, gyan and vairagya will automatically come to you. Knowledge will get revealed from within. When Kabir Das ji, during his time, they used to have a big scholar who would know all the Shastra, Vedas, and everything. And people during during that time, they would go to Kabir ji and not to this person. So this person asked Kabir ji, why do people come to you and why don't they come to me? So Kabir ji said very classic statement. He said, "तुम कहो किताब की लेखी, मैं कहूँ आँखों देखी, आँखों की निज आँखों देखी." So when the knowledge, for knowledge to become the wisdom or realization, we have to rely on God's grace, and God's grace can be invoked only when we have a prayerful heart and we bring devotion into the mix. If we simply continue to progress through our self effort alone, it may swell our pride, ego, and we might be adding all these zeros. But it's important to add that one into the mix as quickly and as early as possible. Okay. Any questions so far on what we have spoken about on this topic of true knowledge?
In the meantime, Ashutosh has sent a comment from, I think it's from Bhakti Charak. शक्तिमान की शक्तियाँ अगणित यद्यपि बखान, राधे राधे तिन मह माया जीवरू परा त्रिशक्ति प्रधान, राधे राधे. It says, Lord Krishna possesses innumerable powers, out of which three are main: Maya, Jiva, and Parashakti.
Brahma, Jeev, and Maya, right? So Maharaj Ji gave this philosophy. Basically, he expounded the philosophy from where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left. And he said that in coming years, people are going to write theses, commentaries, and do doctorates on this, right? Brahma, Jeev, and Maya. This is how much it will pick up. It's a very profound piece of knowledge that we have access to because we are extremely fortunate, I must say that. So yes, he said for now, although like in this beautiful Bhakti Shatak Chapai that you just recited, although God has innumerable, infinite energies, but for now, for our spiritual growth's sake, He has simplified it for us and say you need to know these three. Um, and then in due course of time, I think we'll get to know others as well as we keep on progressing. But for now, let's understand these are the three main energies of God that are relevant for us to understand from a theoretical standpoint and to address the questions that may arise around that. Okay. Yes, Sandhya?
Sandhya, Radhe Radhe. Yeah.
Radhe Radhe. So, knowledge leads to faith, and faith leads to love, and love will ultimately make us surrender, right?
Knowledge leads to, yeah, that's right. Ramayana says, right? Janu binu hoy na partiti, binu partiti na hoy priti.
So, going by that, knowledge alone should actually, I mean, help develop bhakti, the sentiment of bhakti. Like for those where naturally sanskars are not such that
knowledge mixed with devotion. So if you're going to read stuff, basically scriptural stuff with pride and that thing, then it may not become the realized knowledge, right? You need God's grace, even for Bhagavad Gita shloka to sit in our head, or for us to feel something about it. It needs God's grace. So you need to approach it with humility. Even that knowledge will fructify into wisdom with grace only.
But ego will also go by grace only, right? Like if someone is like in sattvic mode, genuinely trying to learn about God through knowledge. And I mean, devotion will also come through knowledge only, right?
Yeah, true.
So,
Devotion will come through knowledge, leads to devotion. Devotion leads to knowledge. That's
so,
true.
so yeah, so I was just asking from that perspective that like if we compare these three categories, one who's doing like purely bhakti, one who's genuinely curious and trying to acquire knowledge and getting into the depth of it, and the third which is totally ignorant and nowhere in any of this, right? So then one can say that someone who's trying to acquire knowledge without knowing how even be ABC of bhakti will still eventually be better than someone who's not yeah.
True, because even acquiring knowledge, or let's say somebody lands, in some Bhagavad Gita session, or lands, basically gets a book and start reading it. Even that initial day, right? That faith may not be proper, but still that person is trying to understand that. That itself is considered intellectual sacrifice at some, and some level of intellectual sacrifice that person is committing. And sacrifice purifies and draws grace at that level as well. So God may open up more windows. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita itself, Lord Krishna goes on to say that four kind of people approach him. He says, Jigyasu, Arto, Arti, and Gyani. Chaturvidha bhajante man, yojana paryupasate, Jigyasu, Arto, Arti. So Jigyasu would be the curiosity, the one who is curious. Right? They might approach it. They may not have faith to begin with, but they have curiosity that could lead to the next step. And then once they develop a little bit of faith, then the knowledge will start getting revealed. And when the knowledge will start getting revealed, the faith will get reinforced, and it starts becoming a mutually reinforcing kind of a thing. So yeah, it can happen that way too. Because
And
not everybody has faith, right? They just approach, oh, it seems kind of an interesting thing. Let's explore that, and then it can open up a lot of avenues around that. Yeah. See, this book itself, if you touch, right, like Swamiji says, if you simply hold this book with love, maybe turn a page, that itself can do a lot of wonderful things. So that is the power of this knowledge. Just to
yeah,
get to that position, God can grace you, who knows, right? Krishna is waiting with his open arms. So yeah.
yeah, in fact, he said like someone who doesn't even know what is there in the book and
True.
doesn't even have an emotion for it, the emotion with which Swamiji has written it will actually reflect on that individual. So that is how the grace will flow. So
Krishna
yeah,
says, right, yen kain prakaran, and then God's knowledge is like a philosopher's stone. It will do the trick, whether you do it intentionally, whether with love,
not
whether with hate,
intentional.
without with disinterest. I mean, you just need to contact that thing somehow, and it will start doing its magic. Yeah.
And one more question regarding this slide only. So, I mean, as far as I am able to think, is it like we all the time deal with Guna Varika Maya only? Like, I mean, Swarupa Varika Maya in terms of our daily dealings, like
Yeah,
it
we
would
are
be
under Guna Varika Maya that keeps us engaged in this world, because we don't do the business of creating this world, right? In Siddhis, you may get control of Swarupa Varika Maya, where you can create world. But we for our purpose, we deal with the Guna Varika Maya only.
and that which one of these cannot be conquered by
Sattva cannot be conquered by our soul.
the
You can
Guna Varika
conquer
Maya?
tamas and rajas, but sattva you cannot conquer by your self effort, because sattva, that sense of pride would still remain. Let's say you are a very honest person, a good person. You want to help people. You're a philanthropist. You do a lot of charity. You discharge your responsibility very honestly. All that stuff you do, but you don't believe in God, and you don't bring God into the mix, then at best you can attain sattva. That sense of pride will still not go away. The defect of pride cannot be overcome. So the vidya maya and avidya maya, I spoke about. Avidya maya you can conquer, which is rajas tamas, But the Vidya Maya, the Sattva, you cannot conquer. You need to surrender to God in order to conquer that. So you can go up to a certain level. I think you can go up to Atma Gyan as well, but not the Brahma Gyan. Atma Gyan is knowing the self. Brahma Gyan is knowing the, the vast ocean that you're talking about. So you will probably get to know the drop, but not the ocean at that point. Good questions. Any other question? Surinder ji is joining after a long time, and it's no coincidence that tomorrow we'll talk about surrender as well. Okay, any more questions related to this? Because it's
Abaji had
very
hand raised
philosophical today. Yeah,
for
sorry.
some time. Abaji had a hand raised.
Yes, Abaji,
Abaji,
please go ahead.
any
I think you had
concerns,
a
doubts?
question. No, you have to create a question, okay, even if it's answered.
I'll mute you, Abaji.
Right, please.
Radhe, Radhe. So I might be confused, or I'm confusing myself, right? So when you think about Maya, right, and the first slide where you had, even in this slide, right, you do Gyan, you do japa, you do every day you think about all of these things. But at the end of the day, you're working in this Maya, right? You go day in, day out, you go to work, you look for a job, you work to earn money. But then how do you know you're surrendering without, like, you're not messing up, if I'm making sense there, right? Like you're truly surrendering without falling into the Maya, but also at the same time you're surrendering, right? And it's a little bit harder to explain, but
Understood. Are you going forward or moving backwards or going lateral, right? I mean, how do you know that? Because you have excessive exposure to Maya is what you're saying, right?
yeah, and I mean, you do all of these things, right? On this slide, you do the Gyan, you might not understand it, right? You might not understand everything you're doing the japa, you're doing the bhakti. But at the end of the day, you get pulled into this Maya, but then how do you know your intentions are there, right? You yourself are trying to build your intentions, but at the end of the day, you're still working backwards sometimes, I feel, because you're putting your day-to-day Maya behind it, right? And it might be more complicated than I don't know.
So the science of work. So I think probably some of these aspects will be touched upon in the framework that is going to get presented. At least I'm preempting it. I don't know, in the cash up segment tomorrow, because it's going to talk about the principles of surrender tomorrow. And then you see how do you map it to your day-to-day lives, right? Activities that you carry out in your day-to-day life. But to answer your question, that is why Lord Krishna introduced the concept of Karam Yoga, because he knew that you will be dealing with the world, right? And then he said the science of work. Any activity that you do, how do you do it so that it's not binding? It is not taking you backwards. And that is where he said, then, he gave the four principles, right? That your fruits are not for your enjoyment, give up the attachment to results, offer it to God, and focus on the process, not so much on the results. So he gave that part of it, right? So with Karam Yoga, the concept of Karam Yoga is to bring God into the consciousness in regardless of what you are doing, as opposed to getting implicated in day-to-day life and actions and the drama that is unfolding around you. So that consciousness has to be built over time. And one is, like there was a woodcutter who would go about cutting the woods, and there were two woodcutters. In fact, one would go about cutting the woods, and other would cut 2 or 3 times more than the first one. And this guy would say, how do you manage that? And because this guy was working more harder than the other one who was cutting more woods, he said that after every 15 minutes, I take a break and sharpen my saw. Okay, so that was enabling him to cut it and be more effective around it. So sharpening the saw is the sadhana that we carry out, right? You may want to start your day with your sadhana so that you can carry that consciousness throughout your day. And that is where sadhana, Ekant sadhana, helps to not only build that consciousness, but to take that consciousness back to the activities that you're performing. So that is what sadhana is, forcefully taking your mind to God. First through Ekant sadhana, and then when you're facing the world itself, until it becomes a practice where no matter what you're doing, you could carry God in your the back of your mind always. And you need to create triggers and simulate that periodically in your head until it becomes a second nature. That is what sadhana is.
So
I
even if
get your
you,
point.
sorry,
Mhm.
so even if you get to your first slide where you talk about anger, right? If you
Mhm.
get angry with someone because, like they don't listen, right? Even if you say it with love, whatever, they don't listen and you get angry because sometimes you have to, right? You don't have a choice. And you still bring God into the mix to say, because you're trying to protect them from themselves, right?
Mhm.
Is that a bad thing then? Or is that,
No, you take a call on that. Are you at peace when you are doing that internally? If yes, then sure. Now your intent is pure. You're just trying to help them. But if you are ruffled from within, and in that course you are taking that action, then you need to work on yourself first. See, sometimes we act up with kids, right? Just to drive home a point. That is fine because we are putting on an act. But if something is ruffled inside and you are feeling a twitch in your heart when you are doing that, and your mind is saying, I'm doing it for them only, but you still need to work on yourself, right? Because you are also feeling something from within. So that's the whole idea. Anger aspect is fine. You may want to hiss, you may want to put on an act for somebody's benefit, but then you need to be completely peaceful from inside, and that's something you only can tell. You are the best judge for that. Am I doing it from a state of being ruffled, um, or am I doing it from a place of complete tranquility from within, but just acting up just so that I can save that person from themselves? That's a call you have to take. And there's a story of Shankaracharya. A guy comes and says, I want to be your disciple. He said, you know what? I'll take you as a disciple, but then you have a defect of anger inside you. So you go and do some sadhana and then come back. So this guy comes back and he tells the lady who would sweep, the broom, carry out the broom there in that ashram, say, take all the dust and throw at him. So the moment she threw at him, he was like all over her. Oh, can't you see this and that? So Shankaracharya said, you know what? You still need to work on your defect of anger. Again, he goes, does his sadhana for a year, comes back. And this time, this lady throws stuff at him. And this time, he does not react. However, something happens inside him. He felt a rage, but he controlled it externally. So Shankaracharya said, still you have a defect. Go back. Third time again he comes, and this time she throws and she says, thank you. You were my first guru. And he didn't feel anything. So Shankaracharya, he said, now you're ready. So the thing is not about external thing is one aspect of it where we get control. That's the first step, of course. But the second thing is, are you detached from that particular action? That will truly tell, have we really conquered this defect, or at least making some good strides. See, we cannot completely conquer this defect until we become Maya, beyond Maya. But at least the intensity, frequency and the recovery, FIR, we talk about frequency, intensity and recovery, would become better over time. And then your trigger points the thresholds for that will keep on increasing. So, but you are your best judge around that.
okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay. Please fill out the feedback tracker. I think we have time. So yeah, we can carry on. I can see quite a few hands. Tejas, go ahead. And Himanshu is raising as well.
Okay, Radhe Radhe. So my question is, does the scriptures talk about japa and tapa as one of the ways to minimize the effect of Maya in our path to bhakti? Is that mentioned? Is that one of the ways how we can
Yeah,
reduce the Maya?
Hatha yoga and other practices are there for, and they are bona fide path. However, this is something that Swamiji also talks about in great detail in Kali Yuga. Actually, these paths are not recommended, impractical, so to say. Okay, these paths are fine. If in I think 12.2 in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks this question, right? And Krishna responds that klesho adhiktaras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam. Basically, what he says is, because for embodied beings, which is what we are, it is exceedingly difficult to practice anything else, right? Maybe if you're in Satya,
Right.
you could have, but
You
this
could have, yeah.
japa and all that stuff, we don't have that ability in Kali Yuga to actually practice it to the hilt, although those are bona fide path as well. Having said that, devotion is the easiest way because it burns the seed as well. Let's say through Hatha Yoga and stuff, you are forcefully suppressing certain desires, right? You are saying, I'm going to deny it, I'm going to deny it, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it. But the seeds are still there. You have not burnt the seeds as yet. So devotion is the easiest way to do in Kali Yuga, and devotion is the best way as well, because and ultimately you have to mix devotion regardless of which path you pick up.
Devotion and I guess even karma yoga, yeah? Karma yoga also in
Karma Yuga is the end of the day, it leads to devotion only, right? What you
devotion,
need is
right? Yeah.
you are actually giving everything to God. Why would you offer something to someone whom you can't relate to? So of course you have to develop love for God.
Yeah.
And when God says in Karma Yoga, keep me at the back of your mind, Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmasa. So how can you keep somebody at the back of your mind unless you truly admire and love that person, right? And you have really contemplated deeply about it. So that is not
Right.
going to happen naturally, yeah. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So
So they
it's
are
like
all
from
interrelated.
Satya, yeah, it's like from Satya Yuga, from Treta Yuga to Dwapar Yuga to Kali Yuga, the Maya is continuously increasing, but the effect of Japa Tapa is kind of subdued, I guess. I mean, I'm just trying to, describe this whole thing.
The effect of Maya, we can say Maya is always there, but effect of Maya, if you look at
From,
people in those, right? Like in Treta Yuga, they said Raghukul Reet Sada Chali Aaye, Pran Jaye, Par Vachan Na Jaye, right? Now here, how many people would stick to their words in Kali Yuga, right? So the degradation is happening and the effect of Maya is getting amplified, I would say.
effect of,
Maya is
okay,
getting amplified because we are spiritually, morally degraded people at this point, right?
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Satyug, if you think about it, right, they said that in Satyug, the demons and they were, different universes altogether. The battles would ensue. They would be in different planets or different universes itself, and then that's how the battle would happen, if at all. And then in Treta, it started happening within not Treta, it was different countries like Lanka and different cities and different countries. And then in
Dwapar Yuga,
same family,
same family.
proximity. And then Kali Yuga is said both are within us only. If God were to kill all the demons and evil, he would have to kill all because it's
The
all
whole,
within us only.
wow,
Yeah.
this is a nice comparison.
Yeah,
Good,
it's
thanks.
both good and evil is within us only,
Is within us.
depending on which one we want to feed more. Like Pratyusha was talking about two dogs. We have those two dogs sitting within us. It's up to us which one we want to feed more, and that will continue to become more powerful. Yeah,
Absolutely right. Yeah, thanks, Nitinji.
no worries. Yes, Sandhya. Himanshu, you wanted to ask something as well, or
Yeah. In the meantime, Komalji is saying, but in Kali Yuga, Bhagavad Prapti can be done only through surrender. Whereas in other yugas, it was not that easy.
yes, Komalji, I'll give you a calculation of 1 day of bhakti. If you do, how much does it equate to? How many years of bhakti in Satyug? So, greater the threat, with greater threat comes greater opportunity also. So God said, all right, I know it's difficult for you guys. You guys are all messed up intellectually, spiritually, but let me make it easy for you. But that easy thing, we know how easy it is, right? To remember God all times or to just do Harinam Sankirtan. In fact, Harinam Sankirtan is called the Yuga Dharma in Kali Yuga. But it's easy for us to do in Kali Yuga. But yeah, given the state that we are in, we end up making it difficult as well. Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah. Can we take Himanshu there? Himanshu over there?
Yes, Himanshu, you had a question too. You wanted to say something?
Himanshu? Yeah. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. I just wanted to share some points about my experience of the questions asked before to see if we are going in the right path. So I think we can take the 6 principles of surrender and we can just reverse engineer that. So for example, if you think that you want to reach God in this lifetime and you want to take sannyas, or you, even if you're living with your family, you don't want things. That is your personal desire. But even if you are trying to do that and it's not happening, that means it's the divine will, the divine plan. So are you willing to align your will to the will of God? First of all, if we are not able to do that also, then we are not in the right path for the first point of surrender. So we have to align our will to the God's will. Then we have to accept everything as God's plan. And then we should have unwavering faith in God, be it like anything. Even if you're going to get, like, you got cancer and you're going to die tomorrow, even that should not remove anything from inside. But we all know from inside what state we are in right now. So we all can work on that. And we do seva so that all our impurities can be purified, right? Because the Guru is helping us, but first we need to help him to help us. Otherwise, he won't be able to help us. That's why we also see that sometimes the seva opportunities we get from front is not something that we expected, but we are getting it because maybe it is being sent by our Guru so that we can work on our impurities.
Very
That's
true.
why on the fourth and fifth point, we then reach to that egolessness and then we'll ultimately go to devotion.
Beautiful points,
So,
Manchu.
yeah.
I think this is great.
Uh,
If looking at it, yeah, go ahead. Did you finish your thought?
Just last thing, for the japa question, the question asked, there is a lecture by Maharaj where he says, you can do anything you want. Just remember that your mind should be in God that time, whatever you are doing. So you can do anything, just mind should be in God. That's all.
Yeah, that means
Yeah.
adding devotion basically to it.
Right.
Yep, true. I think we are going to talk about the principles of surrender more in from a practical standpoint tomorrow. Tomorrow's segment is dedicated for that. So please fill out the feedback tracker in the meantime if you have any other questions, which we can always try to bring it to the session as well. Yes, Sandhya, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say along the same lines as what Himanshuji said and very beautifully put across. So what Abhaji had asked, of course, we are like work in progress till the time we perfect in our surrender or karma yoga. But in terms of evaluating ourselves, as Himanshuji also said, reverse engineering, there are these symptoms that we can see. Like, for example, anything that happens around me, am I getting upset? If I am, that means I'm not really accepting the will of God, or I'm not aligning my will with His desire. If I'm getting upset by situations around me. And secondly, fearlessness. So a devotee always knows that God is my protector. So one of the symptom of accepting or aligning to that rule is becoming fearless. So that way, as I think, and tomorrow we will learn much more from Kashti and in that surrender segment. I think there are these tools that we can utilize to evaluate our progress towards becoming completely surrendered towards God and Guru.
There are
Yeah.
a lot of yardsticks you can employ because surrender is a very deep and a profound concept. Right? When we talk about those, I think tomorrow we are going to talk about those in greater detail. But yeah, it's a way of life. It's not like an act that, okay, I'm surrendered right now. Okay, I'm not now. So, right, it's a way of life where your mindset is about a perfect harmony with things around you, right? It's not like we are like a slot machine. Anybody comes and we get triggered. That should not be the case, right? Even our annoyance around stuff or things that upset us has to be in perspective and has to be operated from a higher understanding as opposed to simply reacting from a mundane consciousness. Surendraji has raised his hand. Surrender, we are talking about surrender, and Surendraji has, and by the way, you are in Vande Bharat, is what I've come to know. I think I saw your takes. Yes, Surendraji, please go ahead. It's good to hear from you after long. I mean, at least see your hand. We are going
I
to
am
hear from you.
permanently surrender. I am permanently surrender.
Very nice.
I,
Hope you're doing good. Good to
I
hear
can't be
from.
otherwise. I have always looked forward, but I have been off and on. Sorry for my absence during your sessions. That's my apologies. I'm missing. I was missing.
Your apologies accepted. No worries. Please try to make it as often
Oh,
as you
thank
can.
you.
It's always good to hear from you.
You are great. You are
Thank you
great,
so
sir.
much.
You are great.
And if you go around Chandigarh or
Uh,
so,
I,
do let me
I
know.
hope, I hope, I hope Dr. Sabas are very well enjoying with you.
Yeah, they are in India right now, but they'll be
देखा
joining
जी
me
डॉक्टर
soon.
साहब वहीं हैं उधर
They will be joining me soon. Yeah. Thank you, Surendra
हाँ
ji. I
हाँ
can see your train as well. So good to hear from you and see you as well. So try to join us tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about surrender in more detail. Okay. So your name will get thrown up a lot of times in the session. All right.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions
Yes.
from anyone? We still have about 6 minutes. Please fill out the feedback tracker in the meantime. Any particular thing you want to talk about? How would you apply surrender in this kind of a situation? It will make for a very fascinating discussion. So if you have a particular thing in mind and you are not sure, how surrender principle will apply in that, do bring it up or mention in the feedback tracker. We can always tackle that as part of the session itself. Okay, yes, Sandhya, you want to say something or somebody else?
Mahesh Talreja ji says, amazing session.
Okay, thank you.
And Kumar ji says, if we cannot surrender, at least change our name to surrender.
Chimanis, yeah, surrender, we'll talk about that tomorrow. See, Swamiji says, right, I mean, if somebody comes with a gunpoint to you and says, hey, hands up, you say, I'm surrendered. Is that a surrender? Or it's not a true surrender there. Yes, Kumarji, you wanted to add something? And we'll hear from Pratyusha, and I think that'll take up another 5 minutes here. So,
Yeah, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Hanuman. I just wanted to mention that someone was saying that, we can do anything but just think of God, right? So
not anything is a blanket statement. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to mention that that's not what it is, right? You cannot do anything and then say, oh, okay, it's I'm just thinking of God or something. We might trick ourselves. Of course, obviously, if our mind is truly in God, we won't do any of the bad things. But people might get mistaken by, oh, I can do anything. Like I can cheat on taxes, but I'm thinking of God. I give 10% to church or whatever it is, right? No, that's not right. So in India, if you see, a lot of shopkeepers have two books of business. One is the real book, which they keep it hidden, and one is for taxes. And then they will say, okay, you know what, we are doing all this thing, charity and all this stuff, but that's not right. So I just wanted to
Did you file your taxes?
Not yet. I extend. Each time I do it only in October.
See, the taxes, the era that we are in, the taxes are, I mean, I won't say it's okay. I mean, of course, 25, 30, 35%, right? But then one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga, if you go to, the scriptures, is that the government will become bloodsuckers. Okay, they will start increasing taxes more and more and more. So that is an additional incentive for us to invest in spirituality and get out of it. Unless you want to continue to pay taxes and much more of it, then be Krishna's guest in Mrityulok. But if you want to get rid of taxes permanently, no tax zone.
Yeah, I'm trying to come to Texas so that I don't pay at least the state taxes.
Okay, but that will be more than compensated by property taxes. So it's like taking from hand, and they'll take it from the other.
They'll take it from somewhere or the other.
Government always wins. Okay, this is not like Krishna's abode where he will make you win every time. Here you are always losing regardless of what you do, and you can never be too smart for the state and the system. Pratyusha, real quick, we have 2 minutes.
True. Just one statement, but we will never lose in spirituality, though.
Yes, that's right. Spirituality is everything to gain. Materially, you are always losing on a day-to-day basis, right? Unless, of course, it's dovetailed. Pratyusha, 1.5 minutes. Kumarji took some extra seconds from your time as well. So please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe everyone, Radhe Radhe sir. So I just wanted to say something like my son right now asks me all sorts of questions. So he just asked me, Mama, what is I know and what is I don't know. So and you said that anything that takes us to God is surrender, right? Or is bhakti. I just happened to have a bottle khali bottle, empty bottle in front of me, and I just took it and I told, see, all the information that I tell you, you hear, see, everything from your senses, if you put it in this bottle, that is what you know. Throughout the years, till whatever age you are as an adult or an old person, everything will come in that bottle. But then the I don't know aspect will be huge, will be more than what you can carry with you. Or so you should not always focus on what I know. And in that also, if we are putting anger only or greed only, then does it take us towards God? It's one question that. So the surrender means that you have to take yourself to, if it's divine knowledge, anything that takes you towards God, we must practice.
Good, Pratyusha. Thank you for that small piece of. I hope he's going to open the bottle and use it for water as well. But yeah, that was a pretty interesting take of explaining, what we know and what we don't know. Thank you for that. So with that said, thank you everybody for your enthusiastic participation, and especially for the ones who turned on their videos. I look forward to carrying forward with this discussion tomorrow. Tomorrow, like we have cash up segment, we are going to talk about surrender. Please submit your questions that you want to get tackled in tomorrow's session. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ajay and Sunil Bhai. If you're there, I can see Ajay. Radhe Radhe, good night, good day from my side. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.